You are now working at Contour as the head of medical admissions.
So grateful that I can do that role alongside medicine. That's been great.
I want a very warm welcome to you. Having you here at the interview is very, very exciting. I'd love to hear a bit about where you've come from to start off.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James. Look, my cultural background is a little bit complex. I always have the joy of telling people when I first meet them. First of all, my crazy first and last names. So my first name is Irish. That's why I spell it a bit differently. My last name is Dutch. So my dad is half Dutch, half Kiwi. My mum is Japanese. I've lived in Australia most of life, but was born in Ireland. Lived in New Zealand for a little bit as well. So yeah, a bit of a jumble of a lot of different cultures, but proud to say that I'm at this point quite Australian.
Awesome. And whereabouts did you go through school?
So I did a couple of years of primary school in New Zealand, 1 year of primary school in Townsville, and the rest in Cairns up in far north Queensland.
Awesome. And you've come down to Melbourne for medical school.
Most definitely.
Congratulations getting onto medicine. How's that going?
Yeah, it's pretty good actually. I always did have the dream of Monash medicine. It's been a big journey, big dream of mine. But yeah, we've made it, and I'm certainly took the leap of faith coming down here, but I've enjoyed every bit of it along the way.
Outstanding. And for those who don't know, you are now working at Contour as the head of medical admissions. So helping people who are doing what you do, aiming for medicine, get into medicine, learn a bit about what it is the different unis are offering. And that's really, really exciting. So how's that been going?
Yeah, it's been a big change. I started working with Contour last year with their MMI program as a mock MMI tutor. And then I got offered the role of medical admissions. It started off as kind of a one-man job, me just contacting students and parents here and there, talking a little bit about, entry into medicine generally and the sort of link between UCAT, ATAR and interview, because there's quite a lot of aspects involved in the medical admissions process, as you'll know. And then we sort of from that point transitioned into building a team. I was fortunate enough to take the lead and setting up interviews and stuff for a medical admissions advisor role. And happily, we have a complete team of 7 medical admissions advisors this year, which is very exciting. And we did a lot of consultations with students and parents. So it's been quite a big journey, but yeah, a fantastic one nevertheless.
Brilliant. I can confidently say that I would have loved a medical admissions team when I was heading into med.
Yeah.
There's some sort of misconceptions that you have, and sometimes the information's not readily available, especially if you're applying interstate as well. Like you did, there's different databases for VTAC and QTAC and all those different ones. So having some guidance and having someone who knows the ins and outs of medicine is really cool. So that's great.
Yeah.
So Eoghan, to start off, tell me a little bit about your year 12 experience, your high school experience, and how all of that was.
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough that by the stage of high school, we kind of settled down in Cairns, stopped moving around, and I did all of my high school at Cairns State High School, which was one of those sort of larger public schools in Cairns. Look, my experience overall was really positive. I had a great group of friends, a lot of interests throughout high school, particularly in music, and some other extracurriculars that I did alongside it. And yeah, I was really happy with the experiencing. And I think the experience and something that I noticed was as I went further along, things inevitably got busier, and the aspect of balance was key to me in high school.
Okay, so what was mostly keeping you busy besides your study? You mentioned music, but are there any other commitments that were taking up your time?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a lot of interests, as I mentioned. I think music was probably the biggest one for me. On top of that, I had a lot of different friendship groups, and I think this was a result of my varied interests. So on top of music, I was actively doing karate throughout a lot of high school. On top of high school, did a Japanese Saturday immersion school. So I had a couple of different friends from that group as well. I was involved in some leadership activities. So in my last year of high school, I was the school captain and president of the student council. And yeah, I suppose those were the main things that I guess encompassed my time there. Yeah.
A fair amount of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, school captaincy, that's a pretty big thing to take on in your final year of school, and to have taken that on and get into medicine as well with some very high marks needed. That's really, really awesome. How did the school captaincy play into, I guess, the whole dynamic of year 12 and what you had time for study wise, and how you could balance music and friendships and all of that? But how much of a commitment was that amongst the others?
It was a pretty big commitment. I think, our principal and leadership team at the time was pretty understanding of the fact that, school comes first. This is a pathway that's going to sort of set us up for life, especially if it's a, degree in medicine. And I was very thankful of that. I guess in terms of its commitment time-wise, my schedule was so packed that what I used a lot of was time blocking, allocating time to, see friends, socialize, do my music, do my study. If it was a leadership activity, dedicate time to that. And I think that well-balanced approach really assisted me in terms of time management. I think the leadership opportunity also allowed me to develop my speaking skills, which I'm probably most grateful overall. I had a fantastic English teacher at the time who introduced me to public speaking. And I vividly remember the moment where we were preparing for a competition called the Lions Youth of the Year. She set me up in this room with a couple of other students who had done public speaking before, and gave me an impromptu speech question, which is basically a question they give you on a spot. You're given 5 seconds to think about it and then have to come up with a speech. And yet for the first 30 seconds, I just stood there absolutely dead still, could not say anything. It was probably one of the scariest moments of my life, second only to asking someone on a date. But it was pretty daunting. And to come from that point in life to then transitioning and being able to speak on the spot and things like MMIs.
Oh, you put it to great use now in the MMI.
Yeah, sure, exactly. Sure. And just general confidence as well. That was game changing for me. And that was probably the highlight of my leadership experience overall.
Awesome. It's great to walk away with some things. I feel like there's a sort of misconception that taking on extra activities in your final year of school is going to detriment your results and maybe lead you down a different path to what you would hope for academically. But what I've noticed in all the interviews I've had, and especially this one as well, is that it's benefiting your success, and actually you walk away with skills that are really helpful for life as well.
Yeah,
which is awesome.
Yeah.
To zoom in a little bit on kind of your study skills and things, obviously you achieved some very, very high results for medicine entry. Can you walk me through what your study habits look like, how you balanced all your subjects? Just walk me through that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. As a sort of sneaky plug to my YouTube channel, I did publish a video where I talked about all my study strategies.
Let's go and more.
Yeah, no, it's a great video. I spent a lot of time actually developing it, and I kind of consolidated it down into, I guess, 3 main sections. The first part being learning, the second part being understanding, and the third part being memorizing. And so the first part, learning, is sort of in the classroom environment, absorbing what the teacher has to say, making sure that you're taking effective notes. So not just word for word writing down what the teacher has to say, but consolidating it in a way that when you look back at it at home, you can understand it. Second stage being understanding. I used extensively throughout high school mind maps. So I had a mind map program on my computer, which linked across all my devices, which was fantastic. And I did this, pretty much for everything, for every single topic or subject area in the textbook, or whether it was planning out an English essay, I used mind maps, and that just helps so much to visualize the vast array of content in an easily sort of picturable and understandable way.
Plus, you're connecting the dots as well between concepts, and that's one of the things I think has one of the downsides to flashcards is that you're just learning things at face value. So rote learning and memorizing those terms. In mind maps, you're going, okay, here's a this particular concept in methods and it leads me down this way. It's one of the things that I worked on with some of my tutoring students was actually, here's the probability unit and here's binomial distribution and normal distribution. And what are the key sort of terms that pop up in questions? What are the key formulas? What are the key predictable things? And by building those connections, because one of the hardest things about that particular unit was that, I don't know which one I'm supposed to use, but if you can link those ideas, and especially with the mind map, it makes it really helpful. So when you're approaching those questions again, you can repeat those concepts.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, look, it's playing to your advantage. Even you remember all the terms that I don't with year 12 methods. But look, it's such an effective strategy. And in that process of learning and understanding and linking those concepts together, inadvertently what is happening is that you're memorizing and consolidating this information in your head, which makes the third part, which is the memorizing stage, so much easier. And I guess the two main sort of psychologically studied and well-proven strategies would be active recall and spaced repetition. And you can do this through various strategies, whether it's, flashcards, as you mentioned. So active recall is the process of testing yourself without using any information in front of you. And the spaced repetition is spacing out those study sessions according to the natural pattern of forgetting information. And so, I didn't use flashcards, but I used practice exams, and I did them over and over again, put myself under those exam conditions and, time myself, make sure I wasn't distracted, no notes, no anything, so that when I walked into the exam on the real day, it was like second nature. And I think that was probably the thing that helped me do so well in high school.
One of the conversations I had with a tutoring student recently was that I was reflecting on my 3-4 experience from year 11, and I walked through year 11 psychology or year 12 psychology in year 11.
Yeah.
And when I got to the exam stage, maybe it was September, October kind of time that I started doing exams, because I had the liberty of no other year 12 subjects. I was like, I slammed this one. I just did too many exams. I did too many exams and I didn't spend enough time reviewing them. And it was this perception that quantity was more important than sitting down and reviewing them.
Yeah.
And when I got to year 12, with those sort of more written subjects, I went, 8 to 10 maximum, because I can really carefully review those exams. Maybe I do a few more than 8 to 10, but as a ballpark, if you really carefully review those exams and think about what you did wrong, read the examiner's report, that's more effective study than just doing another exam and going, I'll get that right next time.
100%.
So if you were to reflect on your experience with subjects as well, where do you fall on that? How many exams and your revision process as well?
Yeah, great question. Look, I did 7 subjects in year 12. So I did 1 early in year 11. So I did, these are QCE subjects, by the way, so they might be a bit different, but methods, specialist, English general, English and literature extension, chemistry, physics, and biology. So it's quite the workload. And I think
Quite a mix too.
Yeah, it's a huge variation, even just in the science subjects. And I think the important thing is recognizing your weaknesses first of all. There tend to be subjects, I normally categorize subject selection, I guess, into 2 categories, which are subjects that you enjoy and subjects that you are good at. And so the first process is the subjects that you are good at, or in this case, when you're preparing the subjects that you're bad at. So for me, the ones that I weren't so good at were maths. So I spent a lot of time revising methods and specialists. Then the subjects that I were good at were English. So first of all, allocating that time and then allocating different strategies as well. English and math subjects, for example, are almost polar opposites in like ways that you have to prepare for them just because of the different kind of skills that are required.
Well, I was going to say that about the science one as well. You've got 3 very different types of subjects. You've got the English and literature ones, you've got the sciences, and then the maths. They're all very different. But yes, the science ones, you've got content. The English ones, you're applying and writing essays. And the maths ones is very skills-based. And so, that's interesting.
Yeah. There's this like comic out there somewhere, which is like, on one end is psychology. And then they say psychology is just an application of biology. And then, biology is like just an application of chemistry and so forth. And then at the very end is math. Yeah. So it all kind of ties together. It's like all this tiered sort of staggered level of understanding. But yeah, I guess like applying that and those different skills involved, I think is really important, and understanding the subject to its core. Yeah.
So if you were to give one particular tip for studying and study success in your experience, what would that tip be?
Yeah, it's a great question. The study success is simulating the conditions, I think. So many people, will read over notes again and again or write out notes, but it's sort of like running a race. You don't do 1,000 push-ups or sit-ups or leg day at the gym to get better for some sort of athletic event, right? The way that you prepare, and a lot of the thing about doing well in an exam is mindset as well. Because if you psych yourself out and you're like, oh no, I'm freaking out, I've got this piece of information, my friend's gossiping about some sort of breakup that I should know about, and I get distracted 5 minutes prior to the exam, that mental game is so important. And so if you walk into the exam with a confidence knowing that you've prepared this 1,000 times beforehand, then you're inevitably going to perform a lot better.
How do you shut out that background noise as well? Not just in an exam setting, but in the whole year 12. So the things that might distract you, or when things pop up in life as well that might take you away from the consistency of your habits. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I would say work with intensity. So I might have mentioned before, something that I did a lot was time blocking in my calendar. So I would allocate, this 2-hour period of the day, I'm only going to do study. And then after that, I'm going to spend 1 hour where I'm just going out with mates, having fun. I don't think about study. I don't talk about study, as tempting as it might be. And then once I come back, I'm going to crack into some music practice. I'm going to practice my cello for half an hour, whatever it may be. And so, it's kind of well proven that multitasking is not an effective way of kind of allocating your time. It's better to work really hard for 5 minutes and then get distracted intentionally, and so forth, and repeat that cycle. And that's something that I think worked well for me and allowed me to balance all my extracurriculars so well in year 12 as well.
I've seen your calendar now as well. It's a surprise that I could even get time to sit here with you. So it's good that you've kept up the time blocking habit as well in uni. Has that been really helpful as well, walking into uni, timetabling and managing all of your commitments now?
Yeah, 100%. Look, the uni timetable, as you'll probably know, is kind of all over the place, isn't it? So, you have everything from 8 a.m. on a Wednesday morning to then like a Friday. Sometimes there's like a 5 to 7 workshop.
Yeah.
And so, the big picture with, things that I've talked about, like mind mapping, but also a calendar, is like, how can you visualize that? And rather than writing, scribbling stuff down on a sticky note, if you can see it all one in the big picture, I'm going to study here, I'm going to go to the gym here, I'm going to do some music practice, my classes then, it all kind of fits together, and you can really sort of almost micromanage to that point where you're kind of working in intensity so that you do have time for the fun things like, this interview or hanging out with mates, whatever it may be.
Plus you get this beautiful color-coded, just like week by week.
Yeah, it looks like a bit of a rainbow on your screen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I've got categories for like uni and study and tutoring and work at Contour and also the gym, and then it makes this beautiful color. And one of the things I found with uni, like you said, it's when you got the predictable timetable, it's quite good, but it's the little things that pop up, like, the day at the hospital, or another thing might pop up here, and staying on top of your timetable a week in advance, or even a few days in advance on Saturday or the Sunday. I think this applies to school as well, is actually penciling those things in actively on the calendar. You see them, as you mentioned, and then you're prepared to deal with that.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, actually, that sort of rainbow effect, if something's looking on the calendar, like you're seeing a lot of orange, which for me is tutoring, like, hey, that might be an indication that I'm kind of working a bit too much in this area.
Orange is my tutoring.
Oh, right, there you go. We're on the same page. Yeah. And so, maybe I should cut down on this. Hey, there's not much time spent for exercise. I'm feeling that because physical health is linked to mental health and your performance on study or exams or whatever. And so that rainbow effect is really what we need to see, because that's an indication that yes, our life is well balanced as well.
That balance that you've achieved with it, that rainbow effect, that's obviously going to change around exam time. And one of the things that does happen in exam time as well is a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. Sometimes you just have those days where you're completely spent, you're burnt out, and you just feel like, no, I can't study anymore. I've done 3 chem exams this week. I've got to do a bio exam. I've got specialists as well to do, and you just can't really do it. So how do you bounce back from those times where, mentally you're feeling very worn out, or you just kind of feel like you don't really have the time to manage those aspects? What sort of techniques do you use to deal with self-care?
Yeah, that's a great question, because so many people, come to this point in year 11 or 12 where, they've historically been a straight A student, and they're noticing for the first time that, hey, my grades are kind of taking a bit of a toll, my mental health and my physical health are taking a toll. And that's something that I've, certainly noticed over certain points of time. And so it's a prioritization, right? So for me, the first thing that always comes at the top of the list, which is probably the hardest thing to maintain, is health. So that's mental and physical health, making sure that you are getting 8 hours of sleep, making sure that you're eating healthily.
Eating those blueberries as well.
Yes, exactly. And making sure that you're going out to, do some exercise every now and again. And so, in that prioritization matrix, that comes first, and then comes study. And then study in itself within that block is prioritization as well. Which exam is coming up first? Which one is the hardest out of those? Which one do I need to allocate more time to? And that's probably the best way to go about it. And also making sure that you're actively trying to put in a session where you can just relax and hang out with a mate or do something that you enjoy. Because if it's this continuous period of, study, gym, music practice, you're going to burn yourself out very quickly. And the burnout, whilst you may feel productive in that, 2 or 3 day period where you can maintain that intensity, is going to fall off quickly. You're going to waste days, hours, if not days. And in the long run, it's just a time waster. So if we can achieve that balance right and that prioritization right from the beginning, obviously the emphasis will be on study, but if we can maintain those extra things here and there, that is what I've noticed personally works the best.
Yeah. And that definitely is an acquired skill. In my experience, is actually trying to, over time, practice that discipline of balance and separating out time for the things that you actually need to do to take care of yourself. So overnight, it's very difficult to suddenly lock into this awesome powerhouse mode of balance and scheduling. So it's an acquired skill, and the more you prioritize that scheduling and that balance, I think the better you get at it as well.
Definitely.
There is one color maybe that that haven't mentioned in your calendar, which may have contributed a little bit to the burnout. Being an undergrad med student, you of course had to do the UCAT. And you did the UCAT in your year 12 and were successful in getting in the next year. So you didn't retake the UCAT. You didn't need to take a gap year or anything like that, which a lot of students do because, of course, it's a very difficult test. And sometimes there's a balance of different aspects that might contribute to not having the score that's really super duper competitive with all of the other med students. As I said, it's a very, very challenging test. So walk me through your experience of the UCAT.
Yes. Similar to all of the things you said, I found it challenging. I didn't actually do as well as I wanted. And I'll preface this by saying that as a student from Cairns, you're entitled to rural benefits. And that's sort of, in the end, what got me over the line, which I'm very fortunate of. I ended up getting a score of 2,700 in the year 2022, which for that time, being a MM2 sort of rural student, was actually quite sufficient to get me in. But obviously for a metropolitan student, that would definitely not be high enough. And so I guess in terms of my preparation, being in a rural area, admittedly only knowing 1 or 2 other people who were sitting the UCAT to get into medical school, it was a challenging sort of journey. And at many points, I kind of felt pretty misguided. I didn't know where I was heading. I didn't know if my preparation strategies were right. I simply had a practice bank and a couple practice tests to get me going. But I sort of reached this point where I was kind of stagnant in my scores. I didn't know what to do, how to improve. And that was a real struggle. And upon getting my result, 15 minutes after setting the test, I was pretty disappointed because I didn't know about the benefits of the rural, program at that time. It was a challenging time, but I think at the point of figuring out that I might be okay as long as I work hard towards my ATAR, it was a more upward sort of climb after that. But it was a challenging period, and especially balancing that with year 12 is exceptionally hard. So I, commend everyone who's going through that sort of period of time because it is challenging. But yeah, that's my UCAT experience in a nutshell.
Okay. So with the UCAT, I think that there's not really a time that it would be suitable, to be honest with you. I mean, it falls during the June-August period, which is right in the middle. And if you walk away with a score that maybe you're not particularly happy with, it can hit you where it hurts and kill your motivation a little bit. And you go, oh, maybe this is not something that I will end up doing. Medicine might not be for me. And that can be really, really tough. And you mentioned this uphill climb. So I'm really interested to hear how you actually bounce back from something that may have hit your motivation a little bit and hit you with an academic score that maybe you weren't kind of used to getting.
Yeah, most definitely. As I alluded to before with exam preparation, it's a bit of a mental game, right? Once you finish the exam, you cannot do anything to change it. Maybe you had a legitimately bad experience on the day and, your computer malfunctioned, which it kind of did for me, actually.
Really?
Yeah, my shortcut for the next command on the keyboard was not working.
Right.
So I'd select my answer option, and then I'd have to grab the mouse, click, and then do that over the however many hundreds of questions were in the exam. I sadly didn't really get any sort of special consideration for it. Look, I legitimately would have thought that it probably contributed to, maybe 30, 40 marks because I ended up missing a couple of questions in the end. But, with those things aside, you can't really do much to change the score. And so bouncing back is thinking about, okay, where does this motivation truly stem for? Is medicine something that I want to do? And for me, it was something that I wanted to do from year 7. I remember filming a time capsule at high school, and there was little me, year 7, high-pitched voice being like, I want to do medicine. And then year 12, yes, I want to do medicine at the end. And the stark change in voice was there, but the motivation was the same. And so I had that in the back of my mind. Something that I did throughout year 12 when I started actually was journal entries. So in this especially I guess stressful time, journaling was one way to kind of ease my mind and put my thoughts onto paper. And so I spent a lot of time journaling, actually, particularly after the UCAT, kind of reflecting on what are my motivations to do medicine. And, the reality of being rural meant that it was still possible. It was in reach, and the end goal was in sight. And so that's the motivation that led me to the end.
So if you could go back to the time when you were sitting the UCAT again, and all things considered, not knowing too much about the UCAT, maybe not having the resources that you needed, if you could change one approach that you had and maybe offer some advice, a piece of advice for how you would approach the UCAT or try and tackle all the different aspects of the UCAT, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, I would say surround yourself with knowledgeable and like-minded people. I had the like-minded people. I had a good mate who also wanted to do medicine with me, but we were both sort of not very knowledgeable about the whole aspect of UCAT preparation. There was pretty much no one we could go to. No, high school career advisor in Cairns would really know a huge amount about the UCAT or the preparation involved for that matter. And so if I was to redo the whole thing again, I would probably find a program such as Contours that might include a bit more of a guided approach and a tutoring sort of structured approach where, it's not just you in front of a computer screen, figuring out all the shortcuts and the strategies on your own and reading through endless pages of tutorial guides. Someone actually being there and being like, okay, this is what worked for me. These are the little, hot chips here and there that helped me, during this particular struggle. Because I feel like everyone has that point where it's my scores are not improving. And once you figure out that one or two kind of bonus hack, those scores can start climbing again. I didn't really have that moment. And I think that would have, been helped a lot by some sort of guide at least being there, whether it was tutoring or, an older friend who had gotten into medicine, for example. So that would be my one piece of advice. Surround yourself with knowledgeable and like-minded people.
One of the benefits of those tutoring areas as well is that you get this community where you're all working together, and you mentioned some hot tips and you can bounce ideas off each other, but you've also got that point of reference where you go, like, you're the expert, or you're the one who knows what you're doing. I can check in with you when I am hitting that plateau at scores. And well, you're actually in that position now where, not in the UCAT sense, but actually in an MMI sense, where you mentioned you were a mock interviewer last year. So that involves sitting in and facilitating some mock MMIs. We're running through questions, giving active feedback to students, but you also had a really active role working with them asynchronously as well. So giving some advice outside of that mock interview time to give them some guidance. And that's coming a long way from your interview. So the final part of your medical preparation is, of course, the interview, and it's very exciting that you've walked into a space where you're now giving advice on that as well. But can you talk me through how your experience was as a student? And at the very end of your year 12 experience?
Yeah. So I guess, like, as we talked about a little bit earlier before, something that helped me massively in my MMI preparation was my experience with public speaking and impromptu speaking and my leadership activities as well. Being good at the MMI is much different to any other sort of interview that you might do otherwise. Standard interviews are structured so that it's more of a conversational nature, sort of like what we're doing right now. Whereas the MMI is like, you're given this scenario, you need to think about it on the spot, and you have XYZ amount of time to complete it by. And, in the moment, your heart is racing because you're trying to formulate your own words, formulate thoughts, and speak at the same time in a time-limited setting. And it's really quite a big struggle. And so those skills quite well translated to my MMI preparation. And yeah, in terms of my own preparation, it wasn't extensive. I mean, I didn't do a huge amount of tutoring. I didn't do any tutoring, in fact, and it was all kind of self-guided. I was fortunate enough that my dad, who had been through sort of similar kind of interview processes, was able to assist me with it. But yeah, otherwise it was pretty much practicing those stations, again, under simulated conditions, to be able to kind of best allow myself to perform well on the interview offers that I had.
And which interviews did you actually end up doing university-wise? Which MMIs?
Yeah, so I did quite a few. I did CQU, UQ, JCU for Queensland. For New South Wales, I got an offer for UNSW, but didn't go just because of the in-person nature of it.
Okay. Also, you didn't go to the interview?
Yeah, I didn't go to the interview. The JMP one, which was University of Newcastle, New England, I did. Monash, I did. Adelaide, I did. I got an offer for UWEA, but didn't do that one. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
It's a long list of interviews. So in that sort of that's a November to January period, you would have done several interviews there. Okay. And across the board, obviously each interview will offer something slightly different. I mean, if we were just to take Monash, for instance, as is published on the website, it's some testing of advocacy and ethical reasoning, but each university will of course have some differences in what they're assessing. So how in your preparation did you balance the differences that might pop up? Because trying to balance all those different times and amounts of questions would probably be quite difficult.
Yeah, most definitely. Look, I think there's, as you mentioned, some of the qualities that are sought upon in someone who's applying to medicine could be considered fairly consistent across a lot of the universities. And otherwise, I think knowing specific information about the university and their pathway can assist you in, I guess, standing out as a student. At the end of the game, as sad as it sometimes sounds, it's a matter of ranking students according to how they perform in the interviews. And so if you can put yourself that one step ahead and think, what is something that, I can do that maybe other students haven't done? What is an experience I can talk about that maybe not many other people have? So, for me, it might be the fact that I'm of rural origin, or, I've done music to, almost a semi-professional level throughout high school. Maybe it's my karate experience, drawing on all of those experiences to build yourself as someone who stands out and is interesting. Everyone who's been accepted for a medical interview offer is undoubtedly quite intelligent. I think that's well known across most of the students. And so putting yourself that extra step ahead by trying to make yourself interesting and well-rounded, I think, in fact, is something that can probably help you better than, that extra 2 points on the maths exam in year 12, if that makes sense.
I absolutely agree with that. I'm actually really glad that you mentioned that really personal standout aspect of preparation, not only in the interview sense. I mean, it's one of the pieces of advice that I've given to pretty much everyone that I've spoken to about the MMI is how can you, in your, let's say you do 6 stations in an interview or 8 stations, be the one that they remember as the best response of that station.
Yeah.
That implicitly when they go back and listen to the next student for that station, they go, oh, that student back there said this really good response. I'm relating it back to that. And it's a good piece of advice that you brought up, because I've also discussed that with tutoring students in the context of English specifically. Because if we think about how the English exams are marked, English teacher might get a pile of 20 that they mark in an afternoon. Be the one that, there's 40,000 or something sitting in the language analysis in the state, let's say, like Victoria, I'm not sure about the exact numbers, but they're all looking at the exact same piece.
Yeah.
In that pile of 20, in that pile of 40, be the one that gives the analysis of this particular section that the teacher will implicitly go, I'm going to mark in relation to that. I'm going to have this piece here, and then everyone I'm going to relate back to that one. Yeah, it was really good. And that point of being an individual and being unique and adding some personalized touch and flair to things in academically, in the MMI, and in all of those different extracurricular activities as well is just so important. And I really, really carry that advice in all aspects of medical preparation and otherwise as well. So that's super duper exciting. And obviously you got a spot in Monash, which is super, super cool. And congratulations again for getting into medicine and having completed all of those different hurdles. It really is a set of hurdles to get in. So yeah, tell me a little bit about your experience so far of actually the day-to-day of medicine. Is it what you expected? You mentioned a YouTube channel, which maybe you share a little bit of your experience on there as well. But walk me through it. How's it all going?
Look, it's been a big change. It's crazy to sit here today and think that 2 years ago, or just over 2 years ago, I was in high school. None of the people here today at med school have probably made 100, 200 plus connections even. It's been crazy, and it's unusual to move down south as a student from Cairns. Pretty much everyone goes either stays in Cairns or goes to Brisbane. UQ is a common one. But as I said, Monash was my dream, and I was going to stick to that sort of no matter what it took. And grateful for every part of it. I've met some exceptional people along the way. In terms of practical aspect of moving down, all I had was 2 suitcases. I've probably grown my luggage to probably a car's worth, which is actually what I'm going to do at the end of the year. Drive all my stuff back up to Cairns, which will be another journey in itself. But I've decided to live on campus for my first 2 years, which are preclinical of Monash medicine. And I think that has been something that's helped exceptionally in terms of building connections, having met so many different people from such a wide variety of backgrounds, international students, exchange students, domestic interstate students as well, on top of meeting everyone in my cohort from medicine. And in terms of my extracurricular activities, I'd say they've probably only grown since high school. I spent the first year pretty quiet off. I continued playing through the Monash Medical Orchestra, playing cello there. And otherwise it was a fairly quiet year for me. This year I've transitioned to kind of really, making the most of that final year, being on campus, doing a lot of leadership activities once again, some stuff on the residents on campus committee. So I was the vice president of the Monash residents committee this year, and then also an RA for my hall at Richardson Hall. I managed to maintain 3 jobs this year, and also picked up a bit of water polo this year as well.
Polo.
Yeah, so look, I'm trying everything and making the most of that experience. It's I push myself a bit too far sometimes, I must say. So listening to my own advice and making sure that I maintain that mental health and physical health is definitely something that's important coming up to this exam season at this time of year as well. But that's a bit of a summary, I guess, of these past 2 years, transitioning, making new friends, trying out different things, living at university on campus.
Goodness, there's really a lot of activities that you cover there. Like you said, it's a summary, and I'm keen to sort of delve into those bit by bit in a second. But if we just focus on the course itself, now there's misconceptions aside, I'm sure you walked into the course having some idea of what it might be like, or maybe you had no idea. I don't know. Maybe you did some research and spoke to some people about what their experience was. But was it everything you hoped? Did it live up to the expectation? Are there bits that maybe you didn't expect, or you're like, oh, that's exactly how I thought it would be?
Yeah, I sort of walked into medicine not knowing a huge amount. I had one friend who did medicine at JCU, but that's a 6-year program. It's again different to what Monash does. I had no one I knew that had been to Monash Med.
So that's James Cook University, JCU.
Yeah, JCU, yeah, James Cook. And so the expectation was that there was going to be quite a content-heavy sort of 2 years. I'd say that expectation has probably lived up to itself.
Okay. Particularly now with some
yes, exactly.
head and neck and
all those cranial nerves.
Have you memorized them yet?
Yes. Do you want me to go through them?
No. Another time, maybe.
Another active recall session.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's been full on. I think those scattered clinical skills activities, going into the hospital for a day, that 1 week rural placement, those were the things that sort of stood out to me. And so for that reason, I'm pretty keen to go into my clinical years 3 to 5 and really apply all of that knowledge, because I mean, at the end of the day, that's what the job's all about, right? And with that said, apart from the aspect of it being quite content dense, I think something that maybe I didn't foresee as much was the society and culture surrounding medicine. And that has been quite a positive one. I was pleasantly surprised, to go down to Melbourne, to one of the most competitive, highly regarded medical schools for undergraduate medicine, and be surrounded by people that, initially I thought might be slightly arrogant, smart, which of course they're all very smart. But I didn't expect such a welcoming culture, and a number of events put on throughout the first year, which I quickly got to meet a lot of new people. And so for that, I'm extremely fortunate. And I guess, of course, medicine is about the study and the knowledge and applying those skills that will lead you to inevitably become a good medical practitioner. But I think those connections of your own colleagues and the health workforce and the staff is also so important. And I'm really grateful that I've made such a vast array of connections within my own cohort during the first and second years. Taking myself back to high school, at the start of high school, I probably only know the same number of people that I do now through medicine, probably throughout all 6 of my years at high school. So it's been an incredible journey, and I'm probably most grateful for that social aspect, of course, on top of all the amazing things that I've learned throughout the course.
No, it's great to hear. It's always very encouraging. Yeah, particularly like you said, in 2 years, how dense it is, that all the different social events that you've had, and also the in-class. I mean, classes switch around every semester, so you get a new bunch of people to share in class and discussion with, and that's really cool. Yeah. And look, you moved down from Cairns to come to Melbourne, and you're actually going to be moving again soon. As a member of the extended rural cohort, you are moving to one of the 5 or 6 places next year. So out of Traralgon, Mildura, Warragul, Bairnsdale,
Sale, Bendigo.
There you go, Sale and Bendigo. Yeah. How are you feeling about that? Because that's another change. Obviously, you'll get maybe a handful of the same people that you've been friends with in the preclinical years, or maybe you'll meet a lot of new people as well that maybe you haven't had as much to do with.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that transition into clinical years and moving again?
Yeah, very excited. I think it's the short answer. The ERC program is a group of 30 students out of about 300 in the Monash medical program per year. And yeah, actually moving into clinical years as well, this will be combined with the postgraduate medical students. So there'll be another sort of group that we'll be interacting with that we never had before. So that's exciting in itself. I think with the ERC program, something that I'm excited particularly about is the kind of hands-on experience that you get with a rural kind of setting and health workforce. We got a little taste tester of that in our 1 week rural program this year, which was fantastic. I must say I had one of the best experiences throughout my past 2 years.
Whereabouts did you have your
Going Mildura.
Mildura?
Yeah.
Okay. What made that experience so positive?
Look, I think it was just the nature of the trip itself. We all got flown over there, stayed in a pretty nice apartment style hotel. And, we cooked dinner together. We went to our placement together, and we had a bit of a tour throughout the hospital. Got involved in the community, went to one of the local pubs for dinner one night. I think it's that aspect of there's a slight more sense of independency and being able to finally apply those skills in a rural setting, particularly where, from what I've heard at least, you're allowed to do a lot more. In a typical third year, most rural students will say that they've done probably 3, 4, if not 5 cannulas compared to a metropolitan student where, there is that slight more extensive hierarchy of third year, fourth year, fifth year, intern, registrar, consultant.
Rarely are you the third most qualified person in the room. You're very much the sort of bottom of the barrel because you've got consultant and registrars who can do that sort of
Exactly.
thing. So,
Whereas in a rural setting, there might be a registrar and an intern, and then you're next down, and they need you because rural areas are so understaffed in terms of the health workforce. And so that's something I'm excited about, particularly given, my own kind of interest, as I said, about, getting hands-on and applying those skills. And then more so just the experience of living rurally, getting involved with, community that inevitably, being so small, also needs to be quite tight-knit. The ERC program is nice in that we get first priority for the rural areas that we pick from. And then the accommodation, from what I've heard, is actually quite good as well. It's charged at a fairly low rate for rent, and you get a preference if you want to stay with mates or the position or the place that you want to go to. So it'll be a different experience, especially having lived at a sort of dorm style accommodation. As much as I love that, I'm ready to move on to, sort of shared facility where we get our own rooms, small little kitchen to cook together, that sort of thing. So I'm very, very excited about it.
it's very exciting. I'm looking forward to hearing about how that all goes. What's on the top of the list for your preference?
At the moment, probably Traralgon.
That's not too far away, an hour and a half.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what I'm hoping. There's a lot of 21st birthday parties next year. So, it might be nice to travel in between every now and again, of course. Seeing yourself and like a lot of other mates kind of metropolitan based. As you know, the 30 person rural cohort, which is quite spread out, is very small in the grand scheme of things. So it's always nice to catch up with mates here and there again.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So if we were to circle back and talk a little bit about now all these different extracurriculars that you're balancing, like I said before, your calendar's very full. I don't know how you find time for anything, but what's been the standout activity that you've taken on maybe last year or this year that you think has been, I don't know if you can boil one down as a favorite, but maybe one that's had the most impact on you, or how you've had to sort of look at your experience of the first 2 years of uni?
Yeah, I think something that I picked up sort of towards the end of last year and this year was my involvement with the Australian military, so in the Australian Army Reserves. So that's a job that I picked up and probably has made the biggest impact out of all the things that I've done. I'm currently within the infantry corps as an infantry soldier. I've had the incredible experience of going through Kapuka, which is a basic training, and then most recently one of the land combat modules where I get qualified on a bunch of weapons. And I think the army is something that I've wanted to do for a while, particularly for the physical aspects. I love staying fit and healthy. And yeah, I'm also really interested in the discipline aspect, given the fact that I do so many different things. That extra level of discipline of, being able to shower, get changed, shave, all within 9 minutes. Is a skill that I can tell you I definitely mastered over those 21 days of my basic training.
Okay.
So
It's quite a long time, 3 weeks.
yeah,
Well.
yeah.
Have they taught you how to fall asleep in a minute yet? Because
Those full body relaxation strategies, not yet actually. So they're trying to drill us down first and then build us back up. So definitely in the building back up phase now, which is nice. Yeah.
So you said it's something you've wanted to do for a long time. What has informed that desire to go into the army?
Yeah, I think, look, it's just some of those simple things like watching movies back in the day, like, oh, that's cool, I want to do that. I had a couple of family members who served brief periods of time within the military, namely my auntie, who was a combat medic in the reserves in New Zealand. And then my dad also served a little bit of time in the New Zealand Air Force Band. And yeah, I think cumulatively, all of those aspects of, like discipline, watching those cool movies, getting hands-on with weapons and being able to experience things that outside of the normal civilian world you would never be able to experience has been a dream of mine. And of course, the larger dream was to get into medicine, but I'm so grateful that I can do that role alongside medicine. That's been an eye-opening experience for sure.
So long term, where do you see the medicine and the army and also your other current jobs of being in the education sphere with tutoring and also the medical admissions work? Where do you see that long term fitting in? Is sort of being a doctor in the army something that you'd consider, or is it sort of you want to work in, saying the reserves is an infantry sort of sphere and keep medicine separate? Walk me through that. What's the long term vision?
Look, there's so many options. When you have so many interests, it's hard to balance them all at some time. Sometimes, you need to drop off one here and place for another. It's not this infinite canvas where you can just keep adding things on and on, because otherwise your life becomes a bit of a disaster, frankly. And so that is a hard game that I sort of need to play coming into these final years of medicine, and obviously long term as a doctor when I'm going to be increasingly busy, especially if I want to get into competitive training programs. And so I think the army has been something really eye-opening, something that I'm learning a lot from and can wish to continue learning from. And so I'm hoping to continue this throughout medical school, at least in terms of the infantry soldier type stuff. There are a lot of opportunities as well to become a doctor within the army in a reservist or a full-time capacity. I would love to do some combat medic stuff, combining those interests of medicine and the sort of infantry stuff that I've been doing as well. And then in terms of my other hobbies, such as music, sport, leadership, I would love to continue music as much as I can. I do hear that there's a doctor's orchestra in Melbourne. It seems to be pretty much every society possible for medical students or doctors. We're quite ambitious in that sense. But yeah, I'd love to keep playing. I love my music. That's why I joined the Monash Medical Orchestra, and I want to continue that as well for the remainder of medical school. And in terms of the leadership stuff, that sort of comes naturally as you progress up ranks and stuff. And then sports, look, I generally like to stay healthy, go for runs, go to the gym. Water polo has been something new and exciting.
I played water polo in school.
Oh, really?
It's a hard sport.
It is a really, really hard sport.
I was goalkeeper actually, which is arguably the least physically demanding. Yeah, because you tread water and then you have those sort of bursts of trying to save goals, but you're not doing the laps and laps and laps and laps. Of course, we did that in training, but I just remember how exhausted I was. It was one of the longest half an hours of sport I have ever played with a game of water polo. So yeah, that's a good thing to pick up.
Yeah, until you get hit in the face, right, with a ball as a goalkeeper.
I didn't get hit in the face.
Oh, really?
From memory, but I'm sure that if I kept playing, it would have happened.
As I'm lawyer, yeah, something that's quite inevitable.
Maybe it was just you getting hit in the face. I usually save the goal, but
Yes, maybe you're a more skilled player than me. There you go. But yeah, look, water polo has been a crazy experience. I kind of signed up because I knew that my cardiovascular sort of health was getting worse once I got into medical school. I used to run every day, and I kind of stopped doing that. And as you'll know, just swimming in general is incredibly intensive on the cardiovascular system, and it's been fantastic to build up that cardio again and kind of do it in a way that's sort of in a fun sort of sport. And so, yeah, I'm hoping that if I can find another water polo club somewhere in the outer regions of Victoria, then I'll keep that up. Otherwise, look, I'm just generally interested in sport and community, and if I can find that, which I'm sure I can in some aspect, I'm looking forward to that. So that's sort of a roundabout answer to my progression, medical school, and in the future in terms of my extracurriculars. Look, I'll figure it out as I go along, but at the moment, I'm really happy with all the things that I've been doing.
Sounds like it's just almost unlimited prospects and opportunities, and that's super duper exciting.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to see where that all goes and how the next few years fits into. Maybe that changes your mind on wanting to work in a rural area, or maybe you want to bounce back and work in metro, and like you said, see where you go.
Yeah, look, to be honest, medicine is one of those degrees that allows for a lot of flexibility. To a lot of outsiders, it might seem like, oh, this guy's so busy, he's working every single day. But in the grand scheme of things, I think medicine is like one of those degrees that there'll always be a job for, there'll always be work for, and that stability in itself provides some opportunity to explore those other passions, or those other interests. I've met so many doctors who have, little side hobbies. I met one guy who had his own brewery because he just loved making beer, and that was his thing. And little things like those are exciting, and what makes life worth living for. It's not just about work, and the things involved there, which is, of course, are important as a doctor, but also that family, that social network, those one or two extracurriculars that you picked up in high school that you want to keep doing. So yeah, I'm really excited to continue those, particularly my music, my sport, and hopefully the army as well.
Yeah, I've certainly noticed that as well, that particularly as you go into actually becoming a doctor, like you graduated medical school, there are these little hobbies that people pick up that, pursue research, or there's philanthropic pursuits, and there's different, have a brewery if you like, have a winery, all of those sort of things. And it's, one of the great privileges of the work is that there is that sense of job security. Not for everyone. Obviously, there's the specialty programs and things are unbelievably competitive, and people will wait for years to get onto programs. But it is, one of the great aspects of the job that there is that sense of security. And really exciting as well with rural is that there's some really great incentives as well to walk out into those rural areas and contribute to those communities too. So if, as you said, down the track, as you see how it goes, and that's something you want to do, then that's also on the table too.
Definitely.
So the last thing I'm really keen to touch on is what's coming. We've already spoken about what's kind of coming up in the next long-term amount of time, but next few months, you're involved again in the MMI program at Contour. You're also carrying on the med admissions work, which maybe will take a little bit of a back seat in the next couple of months. But what are you excited for coming up over this break, and also balancing that with med finishing up and then the military as well?
Yeah. Always a lot of things going on. But I'm very excited for this upcoming break. One of the highlights will be going to New Zealand. Visiting one of my uncle's farms. Actually, he has one of the largest dairy farms in New Zealand.
Wow. Are you going to Hobbiton as well?
Probably make a trek over there. Everything is fairly close in New Zealand compared to Australia. So, very excited for that trip. It's been a while since I last went to New Zealand, and very keen for that. And a nice family trip. I think, something that I always reflect on when I go back to Cairns, for the short durations that we do get in some of the mid-sem breaks and stuff, is like family means a lot. And especially when you're moving interstate, you miss that kind of connection. And that's something that's good to have again. So I'll definitely make the most of that in my next holiday. Apart from that, though, med admissions work is sort of starting to trickle down. Those consultations that we were running, especially post UCAT, have mostly wrapped up, just given that most sort of deadlines for university submissions have ended around this period in September. And yeah, moving on now, the big focus is MMI work, as you mentioned. And I've been fortunate enough that I've been invited in some capacity to assist with the mock MMIs, potentially tutoring for the interview role, and also some new interview programs that Consul's running, including the JCU and UNSW panel style interviews. And so very excited for all of that. I do have a big passion for, I think, interview tutoring. With my own sort of public speaking experience, getting into medicine, and just living quite independently as a student, like I've learned the massive importance of communication. And also in the army as well, I think communication is so key. And so that's been really kind of honed in and drilled into me over the last sort of 2-3 years. And for that reason, I've enjoyed the process of teaching, both at Contour and individual private tuition. And yeah, I'm really keen to bring on the next generation of medical students. And then into next year, I guess the med admissions work will pick up again.
Yeah.
In terms of the army stuff, I'm currently scheduled for one last course, which is a field course. So we're sort of traditional army style, digging trenches, sleeping out in the open, nothing but a thin mat underneath you and living off rat packs, which will be quite an interesting experience. That's happening sometime around May next year before I become fully qualified as a private infantry soldier. But other than that, it'll just be fairly regular training, and the break will be nice, but everything picks up again next year, I guess.
That all sounds tremendous. Of all the discussions that I've had here, no one has specifically focused on the importance of communication. I think that's a great thing to walk away with, and how that's impacting genuinely every single aspect of your life, and you're carrying that into university, you're carrying that into your job, and that's just awesome. So a really great thing for me to walk away with, and for everyone else to walk away with as well. So we'll wrap up there, and I just want to say a tremendous thank you for coming in. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, James. Awesome.